Je anilo premadano karma kacho.
His Grace Swami Prabhupada ki jai.
Tamal Krishna Goswami. I am very happy to be back here after a number of years being away. You know, Lashwa, kind of hard to get away from when you're working, man. But actually, I got to know Goswami Maharaj when I came here in 1987. He was very kind and welcomed myself and my wife. And of course, we had, being here in Dallas for about 7 or 8 years, we had a number of times to talk and interactions like that, which were very notable, and I remember them well. But since moving away, and he asked me actually to stay in Dallas, but I couldn't do that because of my services. I thought I kind of lost touch with him in certain ways because of the time and not contacting him. But I just wanted to share with everyone, and Goswami Maharaj, when I heard that he had left this world, it was a very shocking and moving experience because I suddenly realized how much I missed him and how much I wanted an opportunity to again be with him and have his association, his good counsel, and his friendship. So in the last couple of months since his passing on to be with Srila Prabhupada, I have to thank, I don't know if he's here, Krishna Kirtan Prabhu, he keeps the white website, Goswami Maharaj Ministry. I was able to connect very well with all the different devotees' remembrances of him and everything that had happened. And in this way, begin to feel again some opportunity to be close with him and to appreciate him much more deeply than I, because of everyone else's realizations and experiences. So you all have much more deep experiences and more advanced consciousness of your relationship with Goswami Maharaj than I, but I came here so I could imbibe that from you and improve on my own consciousness. Thank you.
So we want speak there. Another Manmohi Prabhu ki jai.
Dearest Tamal Krishna Goswami, for well over 30 years you have been my close friend, spiritual inspiration, and hero. Your absence leaves a large hole or void in our Krishna Consciousness movement, in this sordid material world, and in the hearts of the vast number of people who also love you deeply. You've been compared to the Tamal tree, the most colorful and succulent of all trees, and colorful and succulent you are. In your presence, no one was ever bored or ever ignored. You were the hub of devotion and enthusiasm. Your extraordinary mind was constantly engaged in how to help our Gurudev spread Lord Chaitanya's movement. Whether it was as Srila Prabhupada's secretary and servant, heading up the Radha Damodar parties, opening temples, or instructing and enlivening your disciples, you did it all brilliantly and with gusto. You made our Srila Prabhupada proud. In one of your wonderful letters to me in 1982, you explained that Shastric examples of great saintly devotees are not enough. There must be real life examples, and it is up to us to provide such examples. Providing this was to me the sum and substance of your life. You are the moon among many stars that Srila Prabhupada spoke about. I am so very grateful that you have been my contemporary. You brightened my life and made Krishna consciousness exciting and fun. All glories to you, Srila Prabhupada.
Manmohini Prabhu ki jai. So now we'll ask Karl Prabhu to come and speak. And after Karl Prabhu speaks, Mother Guru Bhakti will speak next.
His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Swami spoke so beautifully earlier, reminded me of the magic of my childhood in New York and waking up on those Saturday mornings when he would come. And in some ways our relationship, I think, was very similar then, all through the years, with a large gap in the middle. He was also my hero, and always someone to look up to. And as you say, I learned from him all those things that an American boy learns: how to play ball, how to run the streets of Manhattan. But a very important point, that clearly there was more to his teaching than this. And perhaps for myself, it takes me many, many years to learn these teachings. I am most certainly a street dog begging at your table for scraps. If I have even one point that I could make is there are so many families, and there have been so many examples in the last few years in the movement of families coming to Krishna consciousness. Swami Maharaj, he spoke, he's saying that he never endeavored to preach to us. This was beyond any hope that he could possibly have. And then he said that he received this gift of family from Krishna in these years, especially when there was some different realizations and softening. We all, we go through, we look at our letters, our memories, we go through. You would send me through the years these little notes and postcards, very so beautiful. We found one the other day from Mexico, I think maybe 64, 65, and they were always very simple. One was, I forget the year, there's an earthquake here, the hotel is shaking back and forth, I hope you are doing well. Another one later, it was Dear Carl, this was on morning sweat. I'm living in a tree. I hope you are well. And then just a little bit later, from San Francisco, of meeting with the devotees. And I forgive me for repeating, this is when, for many years, we did not have some contact, but I was also very inspired by these postcards, maybe. And also these memories of Henry Street Temple in 1968, 69. And you come in and first thing, Tilak on the forehead as you're walking in. And very, very beautiful memories of just slim little brownstone, many hours away in Brooklyn. And in our last card this year to our daughter, so many, we understand him in so many different relationships with Goswami Maharaj, Tamal Krishna, TKG, Srila Gurudev. And he writes to Dear Irene, our youngest daughter, this is Irene. Cannot wait till I see you again. I hope that you greet me with big hugs and kisses. Much love, your Uncle Tamal. And this is also how we remember him. So, with just warmth and love and kindness. I also, I saw the heavy side, but this is something I never from the beginning experienced. He was always so kind to me as a baby, and Lord can tell this story even better. Immediately, he took me as his own. So many pictures of him holding me as a baby, of willing the car, pushing me on the swing as his own. When I was just old enough, all his toys out of his house day one, yes, and these were my toys growing up. He was no longer the little boy. And only once, actually, I was in editing his books the last few years, and he was so patient, so tolerant. I made so many mistakes in these books. And his way of instruction with me was praise. And he would praise me, and I would understand how undeserving of the praise I was, and that praise would lead one to try to live up to this vision that he had, which was so much greater. And so one of many, many mistakes, he called me on the phone and went up. Well, how could you do this? How could you know this? I always felt like I could cheat because I never, this mercy I've heard so much about. And it's wonderful, the gentle love, but I also wanted a little taste of this. But the sauce, and he just, on the phone, and I'm loving it up. As you were saying, I enjoyed this so much. And you get off the phone, and I'm just glowing. I'm in my office there. Of course, 3 minutes later, I received a call from Silver from the phone. He says, Srila Gurudev, I'm so sorry. He says, like this, I hope you feel okay. Okay, you didn't hurt it so much. I was just, so deflated like this. The little bit that I but I think we were speaking of family this morning at breakfast, and once a younger brother, a younger sister, whatever, always such, and I still feel very much in that position, and so I still feel like I think in many ways that little boy, on Saturday mornings, and hoping my vocal will find you. But here we are, and I think, as you're saying, indeed, this is, in your eyes, in disciples, as godfathers and god sisters. This is certainly where I find it. And I wake up on this Saturday morning, and here he is, in such a beautiful reflection in all of us.
And then after the group Bhakti speaks, Shyam Sundar Prabhu is listening. Then Arjuna Prabhu.
Somehow or other, on this occasions, I'm always called up to speak. It's not that I have some extraordinary qualities, but I guess I'm the epitome of the devotee struggle. I was thinking about what you have given me and how I can fulfill your expectations of me. Just as Srila Prabhupada was always pushing you, I feel you are always pushing me to do things which are always beyond me. But somehow, out of when you were present, those things were easy to accomplish. Now, without your presence, I don't know how I can carry on. You pushed me so hard to qualify as a doctor and to take up my medical practice because you felt that I could support the temple, but the Lakshmi I brought, and also I could serve the devotees. And I see by doing that you gave me access to so many of the wonderful God brothers and to so many of my wonderful God brothers and God sisters into their hearts and their love for you, that I can appreciate the depth of your relationship with them. And I also, if in your relationships, one thing became very clear, that just as it is described that Krishna has everything, but he just needs love. Similarly, I saw in your relationships that you had everything, but you were purchased with love. When you were recovering from your illness, and when the kidney was blocked, you had so much pain, but you fought against it. You physically put your fingers in your throat and threw up. That did not hurt you. But when Mother Krishna was living, you said that was the thing which brought tears to your eyes. All the physical suffering could not make you cry, but you could not, when it became clear that Mother Krishna was definitely going to leave. We discussed how, if you love her, you had to let her go. And you said, but I cannot let her go. And you started to sob. And that was just one instance of how you were purchased by love. I saw so many times when God brothers, so many of my God brothers and God sisters, just by a simple expression of love, they purchased you heart and soul. And not only did you give them love, but you also demanded unconditional love. And if someone had the propensity to show love, you did not rest till they gave you unconditional love. That was your pushing. You always persistent. Just like you gave them unconditional love, you always pushed us to give us unconditional love. And that was how Mother Krishna purchased your love. I always feel like I'm lacking in my service to you, and I hope that the confidence in me is not betrayed by and that people think that I have so much devotion to the Guru, but I hope that by your, and I pray to you, that by your mercy one day I will actually fulfill the purpose of my life. Thank you.
Because I haven't never spoke since Rodeo. I remember in 1989, I was doing the parikrama at the temple. Sarathi arrived from Hanga in the evening time. And he was just saying, "Hi, Hasmo Kavali." And I was just saying, "He was fine." And he would like to know what the activities is, what time I go to bed. I was telling him about 10:30. So Gurudev Rayava said that you must be watching television too much. And I said, "No." And very briefly he said that, Hashmukh, there are 4 activities mainly everybody performs. But if you don't do something different, what is the use of this one of life? And it's really went into my heart. He accepted me, even though I was not qualified as a disciple, and also gave the responsibility to become a temple president. And he was so kind to he invited me to the Brajadham and allow him to show him by cooking for him breakfast and lunch, and also try to serve the Vaishnava. And also Gurudev requested him to give me the blessing so I can manage the temple nicely. I have the experience like Nitai Maharaj was saying that his body was transcendental. One time, Srila Gurudev has the tooth pain, and he asked me, do you know any dentist? And I took him. And it was a root canal work on the teeth. So the dentist told Srila Gurudev that I will have to numb locally. Srila Gurudev says, no. You go ahead and do whatever you need to do. And if it's something unbearable, I'll shook my head, and at the time you can stop and give numb the spot. I was there sitting outside. So dentist was ready to operate on him. So Gurudev was so particular that he used to carry the table, Srila Prabhupada. And he was so particular that even though he has the battery in the tape recorder, he used to carry in his watch different other AA batteries. So in case those batteries are discharged, then he can play continuously. So he told me, Shyamsundar, give me those batteries. So I gave him the battery. He put in the tablet for the new batteries and put Srila Prabhupada tape and lie down on the table. And I was watching that how painful it would be. But by hearing Srila Prabhupada tape, I never seen any symptoms that he has any pain whatsoever. And the dentist was so amazed. Maybe sometime Srila Gurudev had to do the preaching for the preaching purpose, go through so much pain to show other people that this is just the material body. Actually, in reality, we are not this body. And he showed by his practical example. Also, he has posted on the Gauranga Hall project. I know that 1993, when we were trying to preach to the congregation members, we found so many committees and the leaders. And in the morning, the comment came that we are ready to go out and collect the fund, but the temple management has not yet made the brochure. So we can use that brochure to collect the fund. So Gurudev called me in his office at 4 p.m., I remember. And he said, why that was not done? So we have always some kind of excuse. But he forced us. And he made an announcement that all the devotees should come and finish that brochure tonight. Even if somebody has not chanted the round, that's fine. He said, Krishna will accept the service as a chanting of 16 rounds. And I remember that we get it done by 8 p.m. all the brochures. Then I have seen that Srila Gurudev is so merciful and kind to all the, anybody came in close contact with him, he always preach in some other way. I have seen his expertise, so many of them being close to him for long, that how expert he was that taking a prasadam. I still can imagine when I take the prasadam, that mainly we invite the big donors to take the lunch with him. And mainly I have seen that 50% or 75% of the time, Srila Gurudev will talk and preach to them. At the same time, he will be the first one to finish his prasadam. I don't think anybody can be able to do those things. Only there are so many other experiences that we have gone through. Is calling God brothers and God sister. He has somehow the way that we have seen that to deal with everybody, and the whole yatra goes so nicely because he knows everybody's pitfalls and good qualities, and he was expert to utilize it so nicely. I'm very grateful to all the God brothers and God sisters to come and join and give us the strength, because I have seen in his life that most of the time he has trained us to show his God brother and sister so nicely. And I can see that the perfection will come when we show his God brother and sister like we are serving him. Thank you very much.
Now I'll ask Sankarshan Prabhu to speak, and then after that Parjaswat Prabhu. And then after that Parthasarthi Prabhu from Singapore.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Tamal Krishna Goswami Nityananda. Someone may ask, why would a God brother worship his godbrother. But Srila Prabhupada explains that one should accept whatever is favorable for one's Krishna consciousness and reject whatever is unfavorable for one's Krishna consciousness. So myself being very much a recipient for many, many years of the mercy of Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, being so much blessed by him again and again and again, in correspondence, in association, in chastisements, and encouragements, in so many ways. What to speak of being blessed with his personal deities, Shri Shri Radha Damodar, their service. In his will, my wife was granted them as a lifetime service. So, and also his deity of Srila Prabhupada. So much mercy I've gotten from Goswami Maharaj and getting from him all the time that I cannot believe that he left. It's inconceivable. I cannot accept that he has left us. He is still present. Actually, Prabhupada one time wrote, one devotee named Shivananda Sain Prabhu, he had gone to Germany to begin the movement there. He went all alone. And Srila Prabhupada wrote him a letter. He said, if you remember my humble teachings, then you will always have my association and the association of your godbrothers also. So I find that Goswami Maharaj, he helps me to remember Prabhupada's teachings, and Prabhupada's teachings help me to have his association. So it's a mutually compatible relationship. The two of them, Prabhupada's teachings and someone who so much embodies Prabhupada's teachings. Such an incredible preacher, so boldly pushing forward this movement. What an inspiration. I was so fortunate. Back, I think it was in 1979, there was very few disciples at that time, and so I got the opportunity, even though I was a godbrother, to run his tape ministry. And that was my service. I would just hear his lectures all day long. I mean, just day after day, week after week, month after month, I just absorbed myself in hearing his lectures. And it was such a strengthening period of my life of how much nectar there is in preaching, how much nectar and ecstasy Tamal Krishna Goswami was experiencing by being so much in the preaching mood. And I became greedy for that nectar, so I became very determined that I must also preach as much as I can. It's very, who can compete with him? But we try to take something what he's doing and put it into our own life. So I'm just feeling so much blessed by all of you as well, because you help me to feel connected more and more with him and with Srila Prabhupada. Each and every one of you is very, very dear to me, because you help me to become more and more connected with Goswami Maharaj. And I am sure that he is here right now. He is seeing us, he is hearing our prayers, he is reciprocating with each and every one of us. And I know that as long as we remain fixed in the service of Srila Prabhupada and reading and following Prabhupada's books, that we will always be with Goswami Maharaj in this world, and we'll all be back together with him in the spiritual world very soon. Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj ki jai.
And now we'll ask for just what Prabhu speak. There's grace or just what Prabhu ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama. I think I first met Goswami. I was temple commander of Los Angeles, and Tulsi Das told me, he said, okay, we just want to prepare the temple very nicely. Some big devotees are coming, the biggest. So really? So okay, so I did what I had to do. and Tamal Krishna Goswami and Vishnu Jan Swami showed up. And I was trying to always figure out what made them great devotees? What made them big devotees? And I realized, in fact, from the class this morning, on that tape, he reiterated how he had absorbed the secret of spiritual life. Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad Gita, the secret of spiritual life is taking the word of the spiritual master. So in this class this morning, he also mentioned that. He said, the secret of spiritual life is to take up the mood of the spiritual master. Whatever the spiritual master's mood and desire, state of desire, you take that and then you become a great devotee because you're part of his desire. I was talking back then in Krishna Swami, and he said, Prabhupada asked him once, he said, go to the store and get me some eggplant. You know, Krishna would tell me, I was having trouble with my spiritual life, around and being a good devotee. So, he got the eggplant, he came back, so Prabhupada said, Srila Prabhupada, can I speak to you about my spiritual life? Prabhupada said, did you bring the eggplant? I said, I'm really struggling to get my rounds done. And Prabhupada said, did you get the eggplant? So he said, I'm even sometimes difficult getting up in the morning. Prabhupada said, did you get the eggplant? He said, oh yes, Prabhupada, I got the eggplant. He said, get out. So he said, I realized from that when you're serving the spiritual master, that's the connection. You're worried about trying to be perfect, but if you're serving the spiritual master, you're perfectly situated. It was the service to the spiritual master in that connection. So I was always impressed by Goswami from the very beginning. He didn't care what the pressure was. He just realized, this is what Prabhupada wanted to do. Just throw the weight on my shoulders, we'll get it done. Somehow. Serve it. Didn't care about the pressure because with that service instruction came the ability to do it in seed form if you just do it. So I learned that, I understood that he understood that so that if you serve the spiritual master, you'll become fixed in the devotional service. Sometimes he'll be present and sometimes he'll disappear. But the service is the connection. Because I remember him telling when they asked for, you have a meeting, he asked for, where's Ramaswamy? Probably he couldn't come, he had service to do. Probably said, yes, he had understood the philosophy. So I realized that a person who takes the instruction of the spiritual master as his life and soul, that person can become elevated to the platform of being a dog for the spiritual master. Probably said it takes many years to become a dog for the spiritual master. So from Goswami, I understood that he wanted that position. And a few other devotees were like that, but Goswami really took it to heart. I mean, once when Prabhupada was chastising Sadhudas Goswami, he hit him on the head with a shoe. So that got around to us, but we want to know what this is all about. And I mean, and Gurupuja, at the time, he ran, he said, Papa, could you give me a little bit of that mercy he was giving Sadhudas? So then I realized that, see, you get good things, you get nice, sweet statements from the spiritual master, but that chastisement is also sweet and merciful if you just look at it right. Sometimes, probably if you don't chant around, then you'll think that the service of the spiritual master is like, oh, why did he give me so much work? But if you're chanting Hare Krishna, then you say, just whatever you want, just problem, because I put the weight on my shoulders, because I know you're going to give me the ability to do it in seed form. So just give me all you want. Just put me on that platform on which I can just taste the nectar of Krishna consciousness. So anyway, from Goswami, you can see that he didn't put in his conditions on what he wanted from Prabhupada. Just, he just got in that condition and let Prabhupada give him the service. Do this. Okay. Do this. And most of the time he was always doing it before Prabhupada. He knew Prabhupada wanted it, so he made arrangements to do it. So this made him very dear to the Spirit. First class devotee. He does it before you ask him. Like if you see something, someone is trying to clean up, he has and you go, before he asks you, you go over and help him in first class. because he takes up the service before you have to ask him to do it. So Goswami was that perfect example. And when you left this world, I realized, John, let's see how independent Krishna is. He just said in one sentence, okay, that's enough, come on. Back to spiritual level. You've done it. I mean, what more can you do? You've done everything I wanted. You passed all the tests, come on. Right then, you don't have to wait. Let's go. Everything about this, the Guru was nectar. His activities, he spoke nicely or he chastised, whatever he did. When I was in LA, I was preaching real hard, trying to preach blah, blah. And Tamal Krishna, I thought he didn't even notice me. And then, when I went to Mayapur, next thing I know, I was going to New York. I'm thinking, how did that happen? One day, they told me you were LA the boy, next thing you're New York the boy. So we're sitting out there shouting, and everybody was sitting there tomorrow. Goswami was sitting there, he said, he literally said, Ernest, what? I was just trying to figure out how I can get you out of LA. And I said to myself, so he masterminded that. That was Goswami. You thought he didn't have anything to do with it. He was the one masterminding the whole thing. Organized, okay, we'll do this, you do this, and trip around, you go talk to him like this. And if you want you to say a few words. And I'm thinking, wow, all these devotees, they really want me to come to New York. Goswami was in the background, working all the arrangements, always on top of those things. That was Goswami. Always one step ahead, like he said, always ahead. So anyway, I think it was a very momentous occasion. I just want to say that I'm actually happy to have known a person who has inspired me to be, the dog of the spiritual master. I want to be that dog of the spiritual master. And I want to, on this Vyasa Puja, say thank you for my godmother for inspiring me to elevate myself to becoming the dog of the spiritual master. Hare Krishna.
4 minutes now? Okay. Do you want to speak for 4 minutes now? Sorry.
Apologize for the last time. A little attached. I'm still rubbing my hands. Hope it doesn't happen again. In a few minutes, we're going to have the first ISKCON All-Star Wrestling match. Sridhar Swami versus 125 pounds of tiger meat and muscle. Anyway, just hearing all everybody speaking, it's like enlightening. I was just thinking that when I started serving Goswami Maharaj when he got sick, and I don't remember what year it is anymore. Somebody has to tell me, was the group 99? And it kind of happened almost like Urgis was moving into the New York temple, because Nitai Chand was here. We had my first lunch with him, and I looked at him, and I looked at Goswami Maharaj, I knew something was up. And they had a meeting with Keshav Bharti and about 20 other people on the phone, and it was decided before I got there that I was staying. And I had already decided I was going to stay anyway, and they didn't know it. So I let them play the whole thing out, and at the end I said I would stay. And I told Goswami Maharaj that I figured you did a lot of work trying to get this thing orchestrated, so I just let you play it out. But I was always afraid of him. I don't know why, but, it's just like rumors, And I was just always scared, But he was always nice to me, and I was always doing different things. Everybody kind of knows what I did back then. I was just basically his nurse, or I don't know what I was. He called me coach. Was that you, Lori, that gave me that name, or was that him? Lori? Are you back there? I'm asking, did you give me the name coach, or did Goswami Maharaj give me that name?
She said, yeah.
She gave me that. Anyway, he would call me coach, but I had to coach him through this whole long episode, And it was really sweet. It was always sweet, but I was always waiting and waiting and waiting. And I thought, I know I'm going to get hit, But it never really happened. But just I have one picture of Goswami, and I only have one. And this picture of him smiling out here in the front of the Dallas temple, holding his gun, and he's really smiling. That's the only one I can look at. Because even when I come in front of this picture, I'm still afraid. If I go in front of the picture, I'm still afraid that it's going to happen sooner or later. I think he may just pop out of the picture and finally reveal to me everything he wanted to tell me, which was a lot of things, I'm sure. But trying to figure out, I came for a few months, and just within that 3 or 4 months, I became so attached that, I could just see, I couldn't even speak a few minutes ago. The attachment that he made, that I gained for him was just enormous. Because I just saw such a wonderful Vaishnava, and something just about it. I couldn't figure out, you can figure out what it is. Just his greatness, his service to Prabhupada, his loving care for everybody. And he would tell me, he said, this sickness has really taught me a lot. He took everything as Krishna's mercy. He said, this sickness has taught me a lot of compassion. He said, I'm a changed man now. So, I don't know, we just love Goswami Maharaj. There's nothing you can do, there's nothing he could say to us. We just want to be with him. We're sorry, just like to the core of our heart. I've never felt so pained in my entire life as the day I heard that he left us. It was just, and to this day, I don't believe it. I just do not believe it. I just think sooner or later, he's coming to tell me something. Sooner or later, I'm going to fly back. One time he told me, the only reason you come to England is you want to break on the way back to America. I would come in and he'd calculate how many days I was staying, He says, the only reason you're coming here is you don't want to fly all the way back. You're not coming to see me. I said, no, that's not true. I said, I want to see you, but I also want to break. And it was like a big discussion. Which was more important, the break or the, everything had to be analyzed down to you split the hair a million times, And someone was describing his loving embrace, and I remember when he first started walking. Of course, I used to have to carry him kind of, and when he was sick. And then we first started walking in the hallway. He had to get exercise. So he'd always have to have his arm around me. He'd be hanging on me. He'd say, we had a choice between you and Indra Dumna Maharaj. Who was going to come? He said, you're the right choice because you're the right size. So he would walk up and down the hallway every day. He'd be hanging on me, And he would, a half a lap. Not even, how long the hallway is up in his quarters. He'd get halfway through and he'd say, I'm tired, I have to put my head on your shoulder. So I said, okay, so we'd be walking down the hall, leaning his head on my shoulder. And he was saying how much he appreciated. And I was just thinking, there's a million devotees around who would love to have this service. What happened to me, It's just like, hold on to them, shh. I get a few minutes. I get a constellation. Can I have a constellation 3 more minutes? So I remember one time when we first came back to the hospital. Sorry to talk about that. That's the only time I was with him, Anyway, he came back from the hospital and he said, someone has to be with me when I'm sleeping, but he has to be quiet. He says, do you snore? And I said, I don't think I snore, but you could try me out, So, I don't know. I don't know. I'm maybe like one of the first people that slept next to him, except for in China in these small rooms or something like that. So I remember I would be sleeping right next to his bed. I had like one cheddar, and I'd just sleep on the carpet there with my cheddar over me. I'd be waiting, He'd wake up and he'd say, my feet hurt, can you massage my feet? And I thought, well, yeah, no problem. So I wake up and I give him foot massage, and I think, oh, this is great, I'm going to get a long time. And after about 30 seconds, he'd say, okay, that's enough. And I said, am I doing something wrong? He said, no, it's good. He said, but that's all I need. He never took more than he needed. You know what I mean? That my point was that whatever he needed, he took. Whatever he didn't need, he didn't take. So somehow or another, it went on and on. And I told so many of these stories already. Just like one time, I eat once a day. I eat once a day usually, so he eats 3 times a day. So he, was like, I can't eat that much. So I told Radha Krishna, that to give me smaller bowls and just put like a little bit in there and I'll pretend like I'm eating. So then he said, why do you have such a small bowl? And I said, and he looks inside, he said, how come so little? You know, he wanted to know everything that was going on. You know, I told him, I can't eat that much. I said, you have a choice. I can eat a little bit every meal and be here with you, or one time a day I can be with you, or I can just sit. So we had like a lot of exchanges like that. I remember I can't remember the name of the boy that lives over here that cooks pizzas for us. Yeah. And Gurupuja Swami was there. And the pizzas were so hot, and no offense to whoever made them. The sauce was hot, there were chilies on top of them. And so the green chilies, the sauce had green chilies, and then they chop up green chilies and put them on top. And so I was picking all the green chilies out and sticking them to the side of my plate. And then Goswami Maharaj looks over and he says, hey, you're not eating your chilies. Can I say what happened to you? So then I said, no, I can't eat that many chilies. I was picking up the cheese and pulling them out of the sauce and picking them out of the sauce, and they're still too hot for me. So then all of a sudden I saw Goswami Maharaj slip one underneath his katori. He was picking them out too, and I picked up his katori. And it turns out the only one that was eating all the chilies was Gurupuja Swami. Who couldn't take chilies in the first place, and then we didn't see him for 2 or 3 days. So as they say, not a stone or katori went unturned. So anyway, I guess my time is up. I have a few more things I'll say, but maybe later on we can talk longer. I can go on and on and on, because tomorrow or this evening or whatever the different schedule is. Because, it's funny because when one day we were sitting in the room and Goswami said to me, he says, the reason we're here together isn't very good, but he says, I'm really glad we're together. So, Srila Goswami Maharaj.
There is Grace Power Society Prabhu ki jai.
Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Vishnu Tamal Krishna Goswami. Every time I say his name, this is like chokes. It's very difficult. Anyway, I first met Srila Gurudev in Singapore. It's 1985. I've read the books, I wanted to meet a guru, an ISKCON guru. I was already told that Prabhupada had left. So when first time I met him was in a small apartment room. The moment I came in, I saw, this is my guru. I felt really. Then within I think about 6 months, he said he wanted to give me initiation. I told him I wasn't ready. He said, no, you're ready. I said, you're going to push. Anyway, I told him, that it was difficult first to accept anybody else except Prabhupada. Then he told me, do not worry. Soon you will learn to love me more. And that turned out to be true. And he asked me then questions just before, he was going to initiate. He says, I told him, do we go back to Godhead in this very lifetime? He said, if you follow the 4 regulator principles. And I also asked him one more question. I asked him, will we meet each other in the spiritual world at that time? And I don't know why I asked him that. And he said, we will meet.
now that I remember, we will meet Srila Gurudev back in the spiritual world. It will happen, and it is going to happen. Of that, I'm quite sure. And I hope all of his disciples take that to heart. Do not feel shattered. He's always there. All his God brothers have said so many things. Every one of you has said certain aspect of his life. It's so interesting that it happens, and we all of the disciples have experienced every aspect of his character. There's so many things to say. I think I shall stop here now.
Now I'll ask His Holiness Giridhari Maharaj to come and speak. Jai His Holiness Giridhari Maharaj ki Jai.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Consciousness Srimati Tamal Krishna Goswami Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Consciousness Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Charane Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Tasukadeshatari Vanchakalpa Turiyacha Kripasimudevcha Titanam Pavadevyo Vaishnavevyo. All the devotees have spoken so wonderfully. It's hard to condense nearly 30 years in 6 minutes, but just a few thoughts. When Bhakti Prabhupada was speaking about strongly desiring the heavy side, the mercy, as he called it, I was one of those recipients of that mercy. Although I had both sides, but there's a couple interesting episodes. And one of those was at the time when we went to Hong Kong in the beginning, in 1980. When I first came, because I was one of the first devotees to come there, and at that time the only god brother. So I remember we had some meetings, there were some guests there, and he really poured it on heavy. He was praising, at that time I had not taken sannyas, but he said this Giridhari Prabhu is this, and he's that, he's this, and he's that. And, I was thinking, well, maybe it's true. Maybe I am those things. I never thought about it before. Maybe I am. So my ego was gradually inflating. But that didn't last very long. Because very shortly thereafter, he put me through what he later called the TKG crash course to ISKCON management. And that course started about 3:30 a.m. every morning, and it would sometimes go till 12 midnight, in which, he would constantly be calling, teaching, checking, again and again. And it was quite an amazing thing, though, because it was what we sometimes call on-the-job training, because it was a new mission. So at that time, there was nothing. So he was very much in the mood of Prabhupada, I think, when Prabhupada first came to the West. He was totally in the mood of just pushing forward
So we began by getting the books translated, and he personally would go to the printers and he would do everything from A to Z. And it was quite an amazing thing to see. But his determination was unbelievable. I mean, early morning to late at night, never stopped for a moment, just kept going forward. And there were great austerities. I mean, in that time, well, he kept hair, we all had to keep hair. We very seldom would we wear devotional clothing even. We never wore it outside in those days because we weren't sure of what the reaction was going to be. Although it was a British colony, but still, you know, China was right there. We weren't sure. So there were austerities like that, you know, not able to wear devotional attire. In the beginning, not able to do so many outreach preaching activities. We didn't do Harinam, we didn't do things, but gradually he came up with some very ingenious ways of spreading Krishna consciousness. One of them was this yoga program, in which we taught some Hatha yoga, and there was the systematic way of teaching philosophy through lectures, and then giving some kirtan, some prasadam like that. And through that, you know, some devotees came forward. And once those devotees came forward, then we pushed those devotees to go do all the things that devotees do all over the world. So book distribution started, Harinam started, and, you know, so many other types of outreach programs. But he never rested. There was never a time where he would just, you know, rest and say, well, we've done our part. But he was always looking ahead and seeing how to expand, you know, push forward. And we were always looking at China, although he had never really spent much time. He only made 1 or 2 trips, because up until about 1987, things were very much closed. It was even hard to get visas. So in 1987, there was kind of a window of opportunity that opened up. And at that time, Kirtiraj Prabhu, who was, you know, working with the former Eastern Bloc countries, he said now is the time. So we made this very bold plan. Goswami Maharaj made this plan. He said that we should go in. And just a small group of devotees, a small team, maybe 5 or 6 of us, we went in, and he was so much in a mood of pioneer. So I see a connection here between his early days. Prabhupada sent him pushing forward, Sankirtan, you know, in the West. He went to Europe, went to India, and then finally coming to the Orient. And he was very much in this mood. He loved to be a pioneer. So we went, you know, with regular, you know, clothing, civilian clothing, going through. We changed on the other side. And then we really didn't know what was going to happen. So his plan was we would go to the parks, because in China, hundreds of people, they congregate in the parks, particularly in the mornings and the afternoons. So we went there, we sat down, and much like Prabhupada sat down, we put a little mat down, mridanga kartals, and we held these kirtans. And almost immediately, upon, you know, beginning the kirtan, you know, people would start to gather around us. And soon there was, you know, 100, 200 persons just very curious about what was going on. So we had a devotee there who was quite expert in Chinese. And so Goswami Maharaj would give these lectures. And looking back, I can see how brilliant they were, because they were very simple, but at the same time, he was able to communicate, you know, in a very deep way, the philosophy to people. So they immediately would embrace it. And they were, at that time, particularly looking for something. And we would, in intervals, what we would do is hold contests. This was, I mean, he was always thinking how to increase people's faith and their bhakti. So what we would have is that we would have a contest, which person could chant the loudest of the persons who would be the onlookers, you know, looking at this group. And whoever was the winner of that would get a nice prize. The prize was one of Prabhupada's books in Chinese. And so we would find these persons, they'd be chanting, and sometimes they had problems pronouncing the parts of the mantra. Krishna would sometimes come out Keshila, or Rama would come out Lama. But somehow or another, they chanted with great enthusiasm. And one person would step forward and try to chant louder than the other, and the other person would come over, and it became quite animated. And so then they would win these prizes, and they would get the books, and gradually, people became quite committed. These are some of our first devotees, and then everything gradually unfolded. But he was so determined throughout to push forward. And I see that, there's kind of a thread that runs through his whole devotional life. As he was speaking this morning on the video, he was speaking of being fixed, paraphrasing Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita verse, to be fixed on the order of the spiritual master. So I see that he was so fixed on the order, and he was executing the order through pushing forward the Sankirtan movement wherever he was. And he never stopped with that. And I think even at Mayapur, when we were having those kirtans, wonderful kirtans this year, he was continuing that in a bigger and better way. Not so much for non-devotees, trying to make new devotees, but trying to bring together many of our own senior devotees, and just utilizing that as a very strong bonding tool to bring everyone together. And he told me several times throughout that visit that he saw this as the panacea. He saw it as the solution to all of our problems. That if we could just come together like this, he said, and we could just chant the holy name for hours on end, that everything would just be solved, whatever problems there are. Because this is Mahaprabhu's movement. And if we can do this, and this is what we're supposed to do, then everything will be solved. So I think that's an important lesson, that no matter what, we have to increase our chanting of the holy names. If not quantitatively, then certainly qualitatively. And go deeper into the ocean of nectar which is found in the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. This is the last point. I heard the bell ring.
No. I wouldn't ring the bell.
I was just listening to Prabhupada. He was speaking at I don't know if it was a disappearance or appearance day of Bhaktivedanta Saraswati. And in that lecture, he was speaking about Prakat and Aprakat Leelas, saying that Krishna has both manifest and unmanifest Leelas. And he was also saying that the spiritual masters, they also have Prakat and Aprakat Leelas. So I see that Goswami Maharaj's physical disappearance perhaps is the end of the Prakat Leela, but his Aprakat Leela goes on. Because I certainly feel his presence wherever, where there is practically no place where he has not touched. There's no person that he's not touched. As you speak with so many devotees, that he's touched the hearts and lives of so many persons all over the world, and even in places. And you come, you feel his presence very much here, and wherever else you go that he was involved with. So I think he is very much present, and his legacy will go on through those who are faithful to his will, to his desires. If there are things that he's asked of us that we have not yet done, then now is the time to do it. And as I was going around shortly after his physical departure, the devotees were asking, what now? What shall we do? And, they said, well, we couldn't fulfill some of the instructions that he had given. So what do we do now? So I said, now is the time to do it. There's no difference. He's as present now as he was before. And if you haven't done something on a personal level, if you've not fulfilled your vows of sadhana, now is the time to do it. If he's giving you instructions for a particular project or particular activities, then now is the time to do it. You can do it now just as well as you could have before. So I think that's the way we'll continue his legacy, and the way that we'll keep him very much with us, very present. Because Prabhupada said about Bhaktivedanta Saraswati that he lives forever by his divine instruction, the follower lives with him. So if we keep Goswami Maharaj with us by continuing to follow his instructions and trying to push forward all of the different projects and desires that he had to spread Krishna consciousness, then he will always be there. And we will very much feel that presence. And the way that, he tried to bind us all together with a loving embrace, that would be felt even more deeply. This is the way that we will do it. Srila Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai.
His Holiness Giridhari Swami Maharaj Ki Jai. Now call upon His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj to come and speak. Yeah. His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna. The last time I was here was soon after Goswami Maharaj departed. And now we're here on his appearance anniversary. But then I was feeling his presence more, and now I'm feeling his separation more. When Srila Prabhupada left, Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami was the elder brother who took charge of all the arrangements after Prabhupada left. And we were free to just remember Srila Prabhupada and cry. But when I came last time, I had to be the older brother, and I felt his presence very strongly in his service. I didn't feel his separation so much. But this time, there's so many, you're all so strong. I'm just so impressed with all of you. You're all so strong. It's like you're carrying the whole show. And I guess maybe, I'm free to feel his separation more. When I was here for his Vyasa Puja in 1999, I spoke about my association with him from the beginning. And somehow today I thought of speaking of the last time when he came to visit me in Santa Barbara. And in particular, one walk we took together. He wanted to take a walk by the seaside, and he asked if there was any place that had a boardwalk. But there was no such place. We would have had to walk on the sand, which he didn't want to do. So finally he said there is one beach where there's a sidewalk alongside it, next to the road. So we went there, and we walked up and we came to a certain place, and Goswami Maharaj wanted to have a little picnic. So we had brought some prasad and we sat down. And from where we were sitting, Goswami Maharaj noticed a man on the beach with the dog. And the man was throwing a ball into the ocean. And the dog was going into the ocean, fighting against the waves, desperately trying to get the ball. And then he'd bring the ball back and deposit it at the feet of the master. And then immediately the master would pick up the ball and throw it out to sea again, and the dog would do the same thing. So Goswami Maharaj commented how faithful the dog was and how devoted the dog was to the master. That even though the dog didn't like to go in the ocean, he said, my nature dogs don't actually like to, swim out to sea, fight against the waves. But the dog was so devoted to the master that he did it. And as soon as he brought the ball back, the master would throw it out to sea again. At the time, I was struck by how attuned Goswami Maharaj was to the psychology of the dog. The only other person who was so attuned to the psychology of animals that I knew was Srila Prabhupada. And I just kept it in my mind. Then after Goswami Maharaj left, and I came here and then went back to Santa Barbara, I wanted to sort of go on a pilgrimage to the place where we walk. And so I was walking there, and of course I remembered all the little incidents there. And of course, today as the devotees were speaking about being the dog of the spiritual master, I realized how Goswami Maharaj's appreciation of the dog was an indirect statement about his own mood of service, that he was so devoted to Srila Prabhupada and so faithful that even though Srila Prabhupada gave him so many difficult assignments, he thought nothing of them. He just went, in pursuit of the ball that Prabhupada wanted, fighting against all the waves. And he brought the ball back and deposited it at Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet, and then Srila Prabhupada would send him out again on another mission. But, so from time to time I'd go back to the same place and walk and think of Goswami Maharaj. And once, as I was there, there's a part of the walk where the incline is quite steep and you have to work to climb it. So at the time I was thinking of Goswami Maharaj. At the same time I was thinking of some internal issue, and also struggling to climb the hill. And when I got to a certain point, somehow I got the answer. And when I got the answer, I sort of heard a voice from within my heart saying, you don't have to go all the way up to the end of the path. You got what I wanted you to get, and you can turn back now. And then I got the realization that that was what Srila Prabhupada had done with Goswami Maharaj. That Goswami Maharaj was climbing, a steep and difficult path, but at a certain point, he had realized what Prabhupada wanted him to realize, and he had achieved what Prabhupada wanted him to achieve. And Prabhupada didn't want him to suffer, because to continue with the path, he would have done it, and he would have reached the end. But to continue on the path would have meant, a lot of suffering, a lot of austerity. And Srila Prabhupada didn't want him to have to suffer anymore. So that was my realization then of why Srila Prabhupada called him then. But still, I've been missing him so much since I got here. And also feeling weak physically, and Yudhisthira Prabhu was perceptive. He saw me sit down, and he approached me and said, you need to take some rest. And actually I did. I was fighting it, but I actually did. And then he took me over to his place, and I did take some rest. But when I was in his place, I saw he had a picture of Mother Kirtida. And just as he was leaving to come back here, I noticed the picture. And I took some time to look at it. And, then I just felt like so much separation from her. And I felt, my mother has left me. And I looked at Goswami Maharaj's picture. And my best friend has left me. So then I was thinking, how am I going to go on? But then coming back here and hearing all the devotees speak so nicely, and then thinking about how sensitive Yudhisthira Prabhu was to my needs, like Goswami Maharaj was. And I felt that yes, we can feel his presence in the association of his friends and followers. Although there's a gap, there's a gap in a way, but I'm sure he's pleased with all of you, and that's the main thing. That's what we live for, pleasure of the Guru. And as Srila Prabhupada wrote to one of his disciples who was feeling separation from him, even in his presence, that if you go on following my instructions, the feelings of separation will transform into transcendental bliss. And I'm sure that will happen. And eventually happen in such a conclusive way that the bliss will be eternal and the association will be eternal. Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj ki
So we've come to the close of the people that we had on our list. We have some more devotees who have written in and want their offerings to be read. They can be read this evening, so that we can have their desires fulfilled as well. Now we will be engaging in the Puspanjali ceremony of Srila Gurudev, followed by a Gurupuja arati. And then after that, we will honor Prashadam in the sanctuary upstairs.
I want to mention about what we were talking about for
Yes. Yes. This evening, when we're giving, when you're talking about the stories, we talk about different stories that different people have. We won't have any pre-selected names. So, you can just ask for the mic and speak about anything you'd like to say about a story that you have about Srila Gurudev, any nectar that you'd like to speak about. And some of them, you will notice that they'll be very lighthearted. We want you to understand that it's not that we consider the program to be lighthearted, but we do allow people to speak about things that make us laugh and, make us feel that there's a lot of lightheartedness in their comment. So if any of you, while you're listening, you feel like this doesn't look like it may be too appropriate to speak in those terms, we'd like you to know that in separation and at the time of grieving, the different emotions that different devotees feel, and we will accommodate those emotions as much as we can within reason. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Now we will have the Puspanjali ceremony here. Srila Gurudev and the Arati. Hare Krishna.
Krishna Goswami iti namine Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami iti namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Dharine Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radhara Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Tamal Krishna Goswami iti namine Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Tamal Krishna Goswami iti namine Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Tamal Krishna Goswami iti namine Tamal Krishna Goswami Prabhupada ki
Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Guru Charana Padma